name is Palesa, Vuyolwethu, Tshandu, and you are watching Disruptive Natives. Space where I try and make companies understand what people, specifically South African people, who buy the things that they buy, almost give them the reason for why they buy things that they buy. So for example, you get a Checkers, for example. I mean, why do we go to a Checkers? I mean, basic necessity food, right? But why specifically Checkers? Why specifically ShopRite? I mean, there's other things that we don't understand in terms of proximity to the store. Let's think about rural South Africa, whereas you only have, I think, Spar and ShopRite are the biggest sort of players within that space in rural South Africa. And so it's almost dictated, you know, yeah. Consumerism is almost a dictation from these four monoliths, being the ones that we currently know. And yeah, I guess, did I answer your question? Did I? I don't think I did. So you know, Karl Marx was the one who said religion is the opium of the people. I believe consumerism is now, in postmodern society, the opium of the people, because with things like Black Friday, it's all psychology at the end of the day. It's about the fact that retailers are telling you that for this one day that we're going to set aside, we're going to sell you products cheaper or 50% discount, right? And I mean, we're always here for a good, everyone wants a good deal. Everyone wants to save money where they can. But what people don't understand is that retailers, at their very core, are speaking to the consumer psychology in terms of the demand and the lack of having a specific good. And I think I wrote an article not so long ago where I explored the psychology of the retailers, or how retailers are playing with your mind. I think that was fascinating for me to even write that article, because it's so intricate, Ayabonga, in terms of even if when you go into a retail store, how they place certain products. So for example, I give you a grocery retailer. When you see a product as you walk into the shelves, understand that your eye-level view are the products that they want you to buy. Everything else that's on the bottom is not something that they want you to even touch. So as long as you kind of understand that that's where their thinking is, and understand that's where the retailers are, you really understand that retail in essence is really a matter of psychology. And all of us are just kind of playing into this, right? We're all, I mean, even myself, I've been guilty of this. I love things that make me feel good, right? Clothes that make me look good or feel, and so we always play into this thing of how am I going to feel after I buy a certain thing. And so that's how retailers have won. Yeah. For producers, I think they take a huge loss, and I think this is something that hasn't necessarily been explored, especially understanding the role of retailers as just honestly a logistics company at its very core, more than it actually is, a space where consumers can go buy their products. Manufacturers actually have power, and if they knew that they had power, they should be, in fact, doing more to sort of get their products out there to the consumer. They just don't have the space, the network, or the capacity to do so. They have power to dictate what products, how they want their products to be marketed. At this point, understand that when a retailer and a manufacturer have a conversation, it's more of It's more the meeting of power, right? So I'll give you an example. A small supplier wants to get his product in store, but he's not really well known, right? But he doesn't have the same clout as, for example, a Tastic, which is owned by, if I'm not mistaken, Pioneer Foods. I stand to be corrected on this one. But if Pioneer Foods has power to dictate to say, these are the products that we want in our store, and this is how we want them to be marketed. And as a small supplier, you come into the same retailer and you say, hey, this is a product that I just started, but this is what I'm currently looking to market into my store. Then you have to question, you know, well, what is retail? What are they trying to do? Which consumer are they trying to appeal to? Are they really trying to showcase all these suppliers? And obviously they have their own interests as well in terms of, you know, the private label goods, for example. Let's talk about private label where Checkers, I think they introduced their own sort of, you know, private labels. So they have gone into manufacturing goods themselves. Many retailers have done this, Woolworths, Pick and Pay, either, or Spar, all of them, because they understand that if you dictate the products that are in store, you are able to dictate what consumers buy. And that's it. It's as simple as that. If I had to choose consumers sometimes, I feel, don't necessarily know that they have the power to actually make those changes. I think there's a complacency on our side as consumers. I mean, we have many things such as the Consumer Goods Forum. They try to sort of, you know, have these conversations with retailers and try to broker from both parties, so the interests, and even the Competition Commission, for example, when it comes to suppliers and supply development, there are big players in the space. But ordinary consumers don't actually know their power. They don't. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. When it comes to social media and these networks, and you see, you know, the whole lifestyle sort of, you know, the whole lifestyle goods. So eating clean eating, avocado on toast, for example. Content has dictated what retailers are now putting into their store. So they say, right? So now everyone's going for a healthier, more, at least for the middle income consumers, a more balanced sort of view of how they want to be eating, what food they want to be eating. And you would have seen recently one of the big retailers, they're now promoting this healthy lifestyle food where they have a whole range where they're producing themselves and manufacturing themselves. This entire range of healthy goods where everyone can eat at a discounted cost, because this is what consumers are saying that they want. But they still have lots of power in dictating what we as consumers actually consume. Boycotts are of interest to me because consumers have so much power in dictating and saying what actually they want to happen within the retail space and within the consumer goods space. Specifically for players such as ShopRite, where we know that there are you know, the labor issues, how much they pay their workers. Recently, there was a story about how, you know, they arrested someone for stealing, for forgetting to pay, you know, for bubble gum, and how they treat the consumers. So you have to ask yourself certain questions around, what are these retailers actually giving us that we are not giving them? I mean, ShopRite is making billions in turnover, and I think South Africa is the largest market. And I don't know whether or not mentioning ShopRite is going to get me into so much trouble, but South Africa is their largest market, and they're making billions from South African consumers, specifically consumers within townships and the rural areas. And yet, we're okay with accepting the bare minimum, you know. And I guess this is where informal trade needs to take its place. And needs to come to the fore, because I think that's a place and that's a player where it has so much potential to dislodge the current monoliths that are actually in society right now. And I don't think they just even understand how much power that they have, unless you go, of course, to town on a Saturday, and you'll see that consumer power with the informal market. You think of yourself as a society, and if certain people in society are not being afforded basic sort of, human rights, or even the basic needs are not being met, you have to ask yourself, how are we as the rest of society who has the capacity to, one, influence these decisions or even make these decisions, how can we say to them, listen, we'll help you out where we can. So I think consumer boycotts are important, but whether or not they will happen is something that is completely different, because I think if consumer boycotts happen, they will be serving a specific group, and not necessarily everyone. Not everyone has their interests in boycotting. Not everyone is interested in boycotting, because certain demographics, certain groups are just not being. They don't care. Let's be honest. They don't care. During my time as a journalist, I think it was really interesting to have conversations with all these retailers, because it really made you understand what their thinking was when it comes to South African consumers. The media, in a sense, is really important in actually advocating for consumer rights. If anything, because what you find is I'd have lots of conversations with suppliers who'd give me a call and who'd tell me that a certain retailer hasn't paid me for this month, or this is how long they haven't been paying me. Or I remember going to it was a whiskey farm, I think. A rum. It was in Ventersdorp. I went to Ventersdorp and I interviewed a guy who said one of the big retailers are kind of taking him out of his business because they've come into the store, they've come into the space in Ventersdorp, and they've basically taken his market. And now he was fighting the fact that, all these big retailers, they're trying to fight, they're trying to take our jobs, in essence, and here we are just sitting idly, just waiting for them to take our jobs. Whereas as small businesses, we can't even compete against those big guys, because I think this is verbatim, he said, they were big bullies. So. They were being bullied, and that's the rhetoric that's carried out across from all suppliers, whether it's even employees. I've got so many calls from employees from big retailers who said they haven't been paid, they've been unlawfully let off of work, and for them it was, how do I get the media to tell my story? And sometimes it was difficult because there's certain things as a journalist you have to prove and to say this is what happened. But I remember a specific incident, and I can't say which retailer it was, but it hurt me, because umama omdala, who was probably my mother's age, from PE, gave me a call and said a specific retailer wants to sell me a franchise, right? And I wanted to buy this franchise, but I had worked there as a cleaner prior to that. So for them, it was all about this whole thing of transformation. How do we transform the retail sector? And anyway, long story short, it ended up that her part of the deal was not being met, and she went to court. There were a number of, deals that were made with her, but she was just not happy, and she ended up taking to the media, but we couldn't write that story because it would put us, as the Sunday Times at that time, in a whole lot of shit, if you will, because there were too many things at stake, and these retailers are too big and they're too powerful for us to actually even do anything. So.
We say too many things. We talk about advertising, or
we're talking about a lot of things.
You're free here.
No, not. Talking about a lot of things. There were too many politics that were involved, and unfortunately, we just couldn't publish that story. And I was very angry about that.